The study of philosophy helped me to separate if I'm here talking to you about whatever it is. I am able and I have the choice and the power not to think about other things while I'm doing it.
Welcome to another episode of Contra-Based Conversations, your show covering life on the low end of the spectrum. I'm your host, Jason Heath. So glad to have you here today. Visit our site at contrabasedconversations.com about all the details about what's going on here. I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message, feedback at contrabasedconversations.com. Let me know where you're from, what you're up to, anything you'd like to hear on the show, any guests, any news you've got. I love hearing from people. This is a community show, and it's just so great to get to meet you. And this week, we're talking about teaching. We're talking private lessons. We're talking public school teaching. We're talking university level teaching. And you can learn more about teaching at contrabasedconversations.com/teaching. This is a new thing I just put together this week. Very excited about it. So check it out. Share it with students. Share it with colleagues. It's going to be updated over time. And it's a compilation of everything I've learned about teaching through my own experiences and doing this podcast, these hundreds of interviews. So where to start for beginners, intermediate student resources, advanced student resources, all of that, contrabasedconversations.com/teaching. And I know you're going to enjoy today's episode with Alex Ritter. And Alex is the bass professor at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. We talk about the musical landscape and the career options for bassists in Brazil. I find this fascinating, and how it differs from the United States. And we dig deep into technique, especially belay. Alex uses this in his teaching. We get into the use of the third finger in belay in the lower positions. And Alex makes a really compelling case for it. It's an interesting discussion for sure. And while we were talking, Alex actually grabbed the bass and played through several examples. You'll hear him demoing a couple of things as well. And my goal for this show has always been to expand outside of the United States. I've been pretty US-centric so far, and I just want to cover all the things that are happening around the globe in the world of the double bass. And heading to Prague for Bass 2016 was hugely helpful, so expect to see a lot more global coverage as we go ahead here. You'll also be hearing the Sconcerto by Armando Trovioli, which is a piece written for Franco Petracchi. Very interesting piece, stylistically amalgamated in this very cool way. And it was recorded by Alex and put out on YouTube earlier this year. Quite a process. We dig into that. And you definitely need to watch the video as well. All 4 movements are up online, and the visual aspect of the performance is extremely cool. Alex even has a GoPro mounted to his tailpiece for some truly awesome shots. In fact, the beginning features him walking out on stage from the angle of the GoPro. So check it out. It's in the show notes. You'll love it. And I'd also like to thank our sponsor, D'Addario Strings, and let you know a little bit about their Zyix strings, which I'm using right now and really enjoying. They are great under the bow. They're great for pizzicato playing. They're used by artists like Barry Bales, Missy Raines, Yuri Slavik. You can get them in medium and light gauges, and they're made in the United States, the D'Addario factory. They're designed, engineered, and crafted there in New York. All right, here we go with our conversation with Alex Ritter. I'd just love to hear a bit about your early years in music. Did you start on the double bass?
No, I actually, do you want the long version or the short version?
You can give me whichever one. You can give me the long version.
Okay. So it all started with me and my cousin, man. Uh-huh. We were planning to play guitar, just playing around the house. And we said, we have to get into a band, have to play guitar. And then we knew that we had this very small conservatory in our hometown. I'm from a small town close to Porto Alegre. It's about 40 miles from the capital here. So we went to the conservatory and we said, we want to play guitar, but we don't have any money to pay for the lessons and such. And then about a week later, they got in contact with us and they said, we got these 2 scholarships for you guys. So we started playing guitar. So after a while, I think I was about maybe 10 or 9 years old when that happened. And then after a while, we were playing in the orchestra. It's just guitar, a bunch of guitarists playing together. By the way, this is acoustic guitar. And then after a while, we were doing a sectional. And I don't know, there were like 5 or 6 guitarists playing together. And the conductor, this nice lady, I will never forget. She said, well, we need a bass player. Who wants to play the bass? And Jason, don't ask me why. I just raised my hand and said, I want to play bass. I don't know why. But then I said, well, listen, I don't have any money. And I already have a scholarship. So if you get me another scholarship, I'll do it. And she said, okay, I'll see what I can do. And I'll find a scholarship for you. Man, next day, she went all the way to my house and said, okay, I got you another scholarship. So that's it.
Nice.
So that's how we started. So I started playing the bass there in the conservatory. And then after a while, I was doing really well. And I remember it was a very tough time trying to decide if I should go on with the bass or guitar. Because it got to a point, where you really have to focus. So I decided for the bass. And it was really working well. And then my teacher said, well, listen, now I'm going to take you to my professor, who was the principal bass player from the symphony here in Porto Alegre. His name is Milton Romai Maciadri, was his name. He passed away a long time. So I went there and started studying with him. And he was an amazing teacher, Jason. For me, he was one of the best teachers in the world. General, not just for the bass, how to behave as a human being, to create strong morals, how to deal with people, how to be gentle, how to be very hardworking. So he was definitely a very strong influence in me. So that was very important because, we were discussing earlier how, the people that were important to you, your references, strong references. He was one of them. It was very important. So studied with him, and this is funny because you probably know him. Milton Walter Maciadri, he teaches at Georgia. It was his son, so he was already teaching at Georgia. And there was one year he came to Brazil to do this festival, winter festival. And his father, man, was so excited to show me to him. I can remember as if it was today. And I was really nervous to play for him. So I played for him, and he was really impressed and all that. And said, you need to come to study with me in the States, And usually people go study in the States to do their master's or their doctoral degrees. But he was inviting me to do my bachelor's degree. So it was all crazy. I didn't have any money. So some people helped. I worked for 1 or 2 years, and then I went to the States to do my undergrad there. So I went to the States, did my undergrad there. I could spend a lifetime talking about my undergrad. But it was very, very rewarding. It was very difficult for many different reasons. It was very difficult. But then again, I learned so much bass-wise and then everything else. Because in Georgia, you have to study geography. You have to study philosophy, which for me was really important. Really helped me to be a better artist. I'm sure of that. Geography, math, political science, I almost failed on that one. You have to do the gigs, which were really important to me. I remember playing with Charleston Symphony, playing Ein Held in Leben.
Yeah.
It was my first concert in the States, and I remember practicing as crazy for that. It was really an amazing concert, and for me, it was a great experience. So the undergrad was really important. Milton Walter Maciadri, the son of this gentleman here, helped me finding my first bass because I didn't have any money at the time, and he raised some money, so I owe him that. That was very important. So I had a lot of help from him. Then I came back to Brazil, played in Curitiba, which I can talk about later if you want, which is 2 states up from where I live. played with symphony there, did the audition, passed, and then an audition for the symphony here opened up, and an audition for the Federal University here opened up. So I took both of them and passed both of them. A year later, I moved to here and then worked with the university. Actually, that was I took the audition in 1999, and there were no bass course at that point in that university. So I helped create the curriculum, and we opened up the bass course in 2000. So it's very new.
Oh, that's exciting. Wow. It's got to be cool to be part of starting a whole bass program and getting that off the ground. That must have been fascinating.
Yes, it is. Today, I see more clearly how important it was. You know, it's like your little baby. And I feel like my little baby that I have to take care of it, you know, because I see that it's helping a lot of people to learn the bass, the instrument, you know. That was very important to me because I had to help create the curriculum. I had to research a lot about what was important, not only here, but what were the references in the States, in Europe. What could I bring to Brazil that would make sense for our reality here, which is very different at that point in time, 2000, which is very different now. But
yeah, that's interesting. What's changed just in terms of, I mean, probably a huge amount of things in the last 16 years, but what are some of the biggest changes you've noticed?
Maybe repertoire. People are more and more interested in not only doing classical music. So that opens up a variety of styles, which I'm still evaluating how to address that. Our school is just opened up about 4 or 5 years ago, the popular music program, which is really exploding right now. Everybody wants to do that. And then classical music, I've been noticing a decrease in number of people interested in that. But at the same time, this is very funny and interesting. I see a lot of my ex-students, for instance, Eder Kinafi, which is an excellent bass player. He got into the symphony, and then he got to be a professor in the conservatory from the symphony. And he is now producing students to get into the university where I teach. Yeah. So this circle, it's really interesting. So the symphony with the conservatory and the symphony now, it's really, producing and is really doing a lot of classical music. As you probably know, in Brazil, for the past maybe 10 years, there were a huge amount of social programs. So maybe 3 or 4 students of mine, they're teaching in the social programs. And they are producing as well, good students as well. So it's all the circle of a lot of different musicians.
Are those social programs similar to like El Sistema? I mean, that's a program we're familiar with here in the States.
They try to copy. The problem is Sistema, it requires a lot of money, a lot of investment, And in Brazil, we don't have that. But some programs, they're doing better than others, Right now, Brazil is going through a bad crisis economically, politically as well, but I don't want to talk about that. So I know that some social programs, they're trying to adapt to that. But again, we have all that. But at the same time, the bigger picture, I think, I'm talking about like population-wise. Mm-hmm. People are not so much interested in classical music as they used to be. This is my impression. This is only my impression. But at the same time, we have people that want to study bass, that want to get into classical music, not only because they learn about classical music and they love it, but they want to work with it. They want to have a steady job. They want to make a living out of it, because they find, of course, if you play jazz, if you play popular music in Brazil, it's fun, it's good, but it's hard to make a living out of it.
In terms of professional orchestras in Brazil, what are some of the major orchestras, or actually maybe do they exist throughout the country? Like, what's just the sort of overall situation in Brazil?
Can I start with the state here?
Of course. Yeah, please.
Because I find our state, we have a lot of different activities related to that. We have the main symphony, which is a state symphony. And then we have Teatro São Pedro is owned by the city. It's also it's administered by the city. So we have, it's a chamber orchestra, string orchestra. We have that. And then we have UBRA, which is a private university, which has another chamber orchestra. We have Unicinos Orchestra, which is also a private university. We have UX, a symphony, which was the one that I played the Trovaioli with. So we have this different chamber and symphony orchestra in my state, which for Brazil, it's a lot of different orchestras. This is all close to Porto Alegre. It's about, we call it about 100 miles around Porto Alegre. This is all in Porto Alegre or close to Porto Alegre. Then in next state up, we go to Santa Catarina, which I believe they have the main symphony orchestra. Then they have two other different orchestras, but only in the capital, as far as I know. Inland, I'm not familiar with other orchestras. Then we go state up. Remember, I told you I lived in Curitiba, took the audition there. And then we have a state orchestra, main symphony orchestra there. And then we have an antique orchestra plays like Renaissance music and Baroque music. And then we have, I know they have a different string orchestra, another string orchestra, which is also very good. Then we go up to São Paulo, for instance, we have OZESP, which is considered today the best orchestra in Brazil. Then we have the state orchestra and many different orchestras. São Paulo now has a lot of different social programs for students that are really good. I've been seeing different students from there, and they're really, really good because they really have access to be playing in an orchestra. And that experience is, as you know, it's really important. And then they are doing really well with that. Campinas, and then there are different cities in the state of São Paulo that has a lot of different orchestras. And again, São Paulo is the richest state in the country, and they have been investing a lot in that. So a lot of different orchestras and activities. And then Rio de Janeiro has a symphony orchestra, has a main theater orchestra, and I know there are tons of different other orchestras, as well as social program orchestras as well. Belo Horizonte Symphony is considered the second best orchestra in the country, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, if you get into an orchestra like OZESP or Filarmônica de Belo Horizonte, then you probably don't have to do anything else. You're all set, and you have to practice a lot and only do that because the level of demands there are huge, you know. For me, sometimes I think it's even unrealistic. But in any case, it's a great job. So you don't have to do anything else. Now, if you get into, for instance, Teatro São Pedro here, which is a smaller orchestra, a string orchestra, then you need to do other things. You need to teach, which is what people do usually, or do gigs around. So usually you see, okay, so the first cello plays in that orchestra, but also plays in that orchestra and the other orchestra as well. So people usually do that. But if you are in in one of the main orchestra, state orchestra, it's depending on which one, it's okay. It's really important for people to have their distance. And, you know, I'm from Brazil. I like to talk. I like to interact and all that. And I really like to touch and hug and all that. I was 19 years old. So I remember that being tough, not having that same type of interaction that I used to have in Brazil. And in the States, you kind of feel a little bit more that you are in your own. In Brazil, it's impossible, you know, to feel on your own. You know, if you're here and then you're the guy next door knocks you, oh man, I need some sugar, please, can you give me some sugar? I need some beer. My beer ended, you know, and the student calling, they send you WhatsApp at 11 at night asking for Mozart's 40th Symphony, you know. So that was hard, I think. The amount of work we have to do in the States, that was really tough. And, you know, I got there with so much energy to practice the bass and practice. And I had to do all the score classes. I had to take all the score classes. I will never forget, Jason, the first class that I had in the morning, the first semester, was Physics 101. It's a huge class, tons of people with a microphone. And the I could not understand one word he was saying. It was very hard. But then, of course, I bought the book that was required and just had to read it and tried it. And I did well. I got a B on that class.
You mentioned that philosophy was something that really resonated with you, which I find really interesting. How do you think studying that helped you in your future career? Because I feel like that's helped me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, in general, okay, the study of philosophy helped me to separate things a little bit. To separate, if I'm here talking to you about whatever it is, I am able and I have the choice and the power not to think about other things while I'm doing it. So if I am on stage, it's up to me to choose to really focus and getting deep into that interpretation and not thinking about everything that went wrong up to that second. That was one thing that really helped me, to discover that we have the power to do that, to choose that we don't have to keep things all tied together. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that I am very good at it, but I have learned that I have the power to choose that. And also to better math my emotions, not only my emotions, but to also how I interact with people and their emotions, helping me in that sense. I think I had a better, cooler way of thinking things out, mathing things out.
Yeah. It gets me thinking about the way I feel like I've gotten better at doing that sort of thing, interacting with different students, because everybody is at such a different place in their development. And rather than just trying to hammer the same message home, kind of trying to find what resonates with them, I'd love to know a little bit about just some of the nuts and bolts of studying bass, at your university, or if there's anything in general, even just what's more popular, French bow, German bow, standing, sitting? Are there any trends that you notice in Brazil or in your state?
Okay, so I come from, French. Italian school using billet a lot. So we have in our university is French, use a lot of billet, still use a lot of billet. Now, Eder Kinapi, who was a student of mine from the university now, he is doing his job with the school in the conservatory, the Symphony Conservatory. Now, he is using also French and billet school. Another student of mine, he's teaching at Universidade Federal de Santa Maria, is this city in the middle of our state. So he's also French and billet school. So in terms of, and there are other social programs, the majority of them are either my students or were my students, they are teaching with French. But the principal bass player for the symphony here is Walter Schink, is a great friend of mine. He plays with German though. But this is the funny story because he started with French and then at one point he changed it for German. Yeah. So now in the state here in Rio Grande do Sul, I would say that maybe the majority of people are playing with French. Now, if you go up, Santa Catarina, there's this one very good bass player. He's playing with German bow. I don't know how much teaching he's doing, so I couldn't tell you. There are too many students that are playing with German bow there or not. Curitiba, Maria Helena Salomão, who's a very good teacher there, she is a principal bass player with the symphony, and she plays with French as well. Now, São Paulo, we say that it's a big mafia, German mafia, because it's mainly German,
Yeah.
But I have to tell you this, man. I really hate all this war between German and French. I just really hate. I'm a very open-minded guy. I have students who play with German bow. No problem, Anyway, so São Paulo is mainly German. Rio de Janeiro is mainly French. Antonio Arzola, who's a great bass teacher and bass player, he teaches at Unirio, and he teaches with French. Fausto Boring, you probably know him. He is from Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais. He plays with French. Sônia Rai, Universidade Federal de Goiás, play with German. And then you got all the central part of Brazil, northeast of Brazil, which right now I'm not really familiar in terms of number. I know that Universidade Federal da Bahia is about to choose their main bass professor. So we'll see how that goes. And they're a very important school as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it sounds like it's kind of similar to here in a way. You know, like certain cities tend to be more of a German town or a French town, and some people are real dogmatic and they pit people against each other and that sort of thing. But okay, that's interesting to hear. In terms of orchestra auditions, and you've taken auditions and you've had tons of students take auditions. What's a standard orchestra audition setup like in terms of like what music do they play? Are there required solos, excerpts, playing behind a screen? What's that experience like?
Well, you know, Jason, now Brazil's copying a lot of models from the States. Mm-hmm. Right now, the majority of the auditions that I've been researching about the program is like one movement of a concerto and then a list of common bass repertoire, you know, Beethoven 5, Mozart 40th, Symphonie Fantastique, Mahler, the solo Mahler 1, Tchaikovsky 4, Mendelssohn, Mozart 39 as well, 39, 40, 41, 35 as well. Beethoven 9, even Stravinsky, Puccinella, Ginastera, the solo. So it's standard repertoire that I see this trending of copying the model from the States. What I have not seen, which I saw in the States at some point, I think it was Chicago Symphony that asked just Beethoven 5, the whole symphony. Beethoven 9, the whole symphony. I haven't seen that yet in Brazil. But other than that, you know, it's pretty much very similar to the States. Also, sometimes they ask for a movement of a Bach suite, but very rarely nowadays. It's usually it's a one or two movements of a standard concerto, like Savitsky, Bottesini, or Dittersdorf usually.
We're seeing the number of people coming out for auditions here. Even I just left an orchestra, the Elgin Symphony, and it's small orchestra, good orchestra, but one of those part-time orchestras. And I think we had 35 bass players audition for my spot for this part-time orchestra. Is that the sort of turnout that auditions are getting? And then if it's the Chicago Symphony or something, they're over 100. Is it similar in Brazil?
No, not that much.
Okay.
But it's increasing. I don't want to give you a number because I don't actually have numbers, but I know it's really increasing a lot. When I was a student, maybe you got 5, 6. Now you have 35, let's say.
You mentioned ballet. You worked out of ballet, right? But what do you enjoy about the materials and that method? First
of all, it's very musical. Mm-hmm. Although it's really the development of the etudes that it puts there. It's very slow. That's why students, they can't take it, and even the professors, it's very hard to deal with it. It's just so slow. But the thing with ballet is that you have to know how to work with it. But first of all, I think it's a really well-constructed method. It's very long, but it's well-constructed. It's very musical. And for me, it's proven that it gives really a very, very solid base, technically and musically, for the students. Now, the whole thing is how you're going to work this with the students. And you, as you mentioned earlier, you have to work differently with different students. But usually you have to do this. You have to, okay, so you start in page 5, and then you work on page 6, and then you go to page 15, and then go to page 25, and then you use a little bit of the last pages of the book, first book, and then you go back 40 pages. At the same time that you're using this, you're already using number 2, which works a lot though. And you use 1 or 2 etudes for number 2. And then you go to number 3, which has more longer etudes. And then a little bit on the harmonic part of it. So I throw a little bit of each volume. And in addition to that, I like to use Cimento a little bit. I use a lot of Petrarchy, simplified higher technique. I don't know if you use that, Jason.
I do. I absolutely love that book. And that's a very popular book pretty much everywhere I go. It's such a useful book.
Look how it is.
Yeah, that's a well-used copy. I think that book was orange when you got it, probably.
So I use a lot of that. I find it that he says the giornalieri studies, the everyday studies are really helpful. And they really are, because they really helps the brain to remember the distances between the fingers, the actual sound of each note. Also the dexterity of left hand in conjunction with the right arm, changing positions in etude number 11. So I usually choose 2 or 3 etudes that I ask my students to do every day, a little bit of delay, then maybe a little bit of nani, and then scales, and then solo and orchestra repertoire. And then if the students are playing well enough, they do a little bit of a longer etude. Stork and Harab I like to use as well, which is really, it has proven to me that gives a very, very solid musical and technical base for the students. Kreutzer, I like to use it. I do use a little bit of Rabat so they can experience a different style of music, which is also very important, I believe. Then there is the Kaimi book, which the etudes, but they are really tough. Maybe one students that did 1 or 2, but they're very tough. I brought Joe Quaranton to Brazil. We're kind of friends, I think. Uh-huh. And he came up with this. It's not really a method, I don't believe. It's a conjuncture of different etudes and exercises that he put together. I don't know if you know this book.
I don't know the book. No.
I think he's selling his website. And he gave it to me years back when it was not published yet. He put together these different small technical etudes. So I usually use them, some of them as well. And they're very the book is very short. It's very, how to say, thin. Mm-hmm. So it's easy on the eye. But it's very powerful. He gets a little bit of the end of even the end of the Billet 1 he uses.
Oh, wow.
Petrarchy's exercise, he uses a couple of them. Even Cimento, he gets some etudes there. So I also use a little bit of that for technique.
Yeah, you're pulling from all sorts of that's great. That's a real rich library that you're pulling from technically.
Yeah, I'm trying to show them different styles, and I think it's very important for them to know different composers, different bass players as well. Mm-hmm. But the bass still is the Billet. And then we can get into discussion about, third finger or second finger.
Well, let's because that's the next question with when you're talking about Billet. What are your thoughts on that? The use of the third finger or second finger, how does that work for you?
Okay, this is my experience. Okay, Jason. Here's the story. If you get a student who never played the bass, just please put your hand on the what we call a half position or first position. Just don't do anything, just play. My experience is that intonation-wise, the first finger will, the same as Cimento, let's say, technique. Then the third finger will set right on the right spot.
Oh, okay.
Gets into the fourth. Now, if you ask them to play the second finger, that note will be really low. Mm-hmm. Now, this is for the first, second, third position. Now, from the fourth position on, things change a little bit. That's why I use for the first positions, I really use 3. Mm-hmm. But then as I go further up into the scale, fourth position, can I get the bass? Yeah,
get the bass, please. I'd love to see this.
Yeah. See, this is what I try to do, If you're so first position on A, second position, I still use 3. The third position, I use 3. Mm-hmm. And then G, I start using second.
Okay, there's the second finger. Okay. So once you get to that D on the G string, the fourth position, then you start to, okay.
But again, I also have to consider the physiology of the student's hand.
Mm-hmm.
If he or she has a big hand, that it just falls into place, that second finger, whatever you are, then of course just use two, So it will also depend on the physiology. But I know I am going against the majority of the bass community in the world, the bass players in the world, because the majority of them are using only two, But experience has told me that intonation-wise, especially in the lower positions, third finger is just really falls into place. One more thing to consider. I think it's much easier to teach with third finger first, and then if the student wants to change for second, like I did in my history, it's easier to do that than the opposite.
Okay.
Because, the third finger it's tied. The tendons are tied. So it's harder to make it work first with the third finger. So if you make the student work with the third first, and they want to just lift it, then it's easier.
Interesting. Thanks for demonstrating too. It's very compelling when I see it in action. And it makes sense. As soon as you get to fourth position, then the spacing is starting to get to be a little bit more like electric bass or a cello or something like that. So the notes all sit. You have more flexibility at that point. Oh, and we were talking about Petracchi. And what are your experiences with Petracchi? When did you first learn of Petracchi?
Well, we connected in 1994. I went to the States to do my undergrad in 1993. I got there about, I think it was August. And then Milton organized a bass symposium. He organizes this huge, very nice and important bass symposium. So I got there now in August, and then Petracchi got there in February. And we really connected, I think, both ways. I think it was 6 months later, he invited me to do the Siena Festival in Academia Chigiana. I don't know if you know that, Jason.
I'm familiar with it a little bit.
It's really amazing. I mean, the town is amazing. The town is beautiful. And Academia Chigiana is also amazing. It's beautiful. It's pure art everywhere. So I went study with him there, I think it was 10 days, something like that. 2 years later, I went back to that. And then, I came back to Brazil and blah, blah, blah. And then I brought him to Brazil to this huge bass symposium here. That was 2001. 2001, he did this recital in Brazil that he played two movements of Trovaioli while it was being done by the composer.
Oh, okay.
It was really cool. Now looking back, I really made part of that history of because he showed to me, look at the manuscript. It was all manuscript. So he was working on the part, they're working together, and he played two movements. And on top of that, he played the Nino Rota, the whole Nino Rota. Now, from that recital came the idea for my doctoral thesis, that I did on the Nino Rota, it's published now on the online journal of bass research from the ISB. So we really worked a lot on the Nino Rota. I did an interview with him. We did the transcription, all that. And then at some point, I went to study with him again in Sermoneta, which is another festival, another great town. And the top of the mountain is really cool. And then, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago, I was revisiting the video of his recital and then saw that Trovaioli and decided to play the Trovaioli, with piano and all that. So I've been playing the Trovaioli for about, I think, 4 or 5 years now. And then last year decided, well, the whole story happened again. Petracchi worked with the composer. They made changes to the piece. They premiered the piece. They recorded that premiered. The composer was in the audience when they recorded. And now Hikori has a part that doesn't have those modifications. So I said to myself, man, and I'm going to get into this again because it's really a lot of work, and dealing with him, it's not as easy as it seems, because he's in Europe, I am here. It's hard to talk to him on the phone. He doesn't use Skype. I have a lot of questions. So last year I decided to go to Siena again. So I called him and said, oh, listen, I want to do this another research. Would you be willing to help again? Oh, of course. It's going to be a pleasure and honor, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, listen, I wanted to go to Siena to watch the students and all that. And I said, no, come to Siena and play. Because I can't go. I'm an old man already. I'm 42 now. And then he said, I'm going to talk to the director then. He talked to the director. He said, okay, you're coming as a researcher. And then you're going to do your research, and then you can play at the end of the recital to the piece so people get to know the piece. So that's what I did. Last year I went there. We did 2 long interviews in his hotel room. It's a lot of material. It's funny stories, cool stories. I think it's very motivating as well. And I went there. I played at the end of the recital. Came back to Brazil, and then about 2 months later, Manfredo Schmidt, the conductor of Oak Symphony, invited me to play with the orchestra. And then I explained the whole story to him. Well, listen, Manfredo, here's this piece, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, let's do it. It was hard to get the parts from recording. It was a whole mess. But we got the parts. We worked on it, and we did those videos. So that's the story so far behind the Trovaglioli. Now I have all this material that I have to work on, this research. I've done a little bit of work on it, but I really need to focus and time to get really deep into it. But, Jason, I don't know. I wanted to have your opinion on the piece because I find it, and I played with piano, and then I played with orchestra. And it's amazing that all the different timbres and sounds that you can hear in the orchestra is just so beautiful.
Well, I was going to ask you actually, because I find it the different sounds are just fascinating to me. It's such a cool blend of textures and quality. And what was it challenging to put it together with orchestra, like in terms of just balance or just the craziness of the parts? Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed in the videos, because this piece was actually made to play with the bass amplified. Mm-hmm. So we had to deal with that. But then once you do amplification with the bass, the orchestra sounds it doesn't really work. So we try to amplify the orchestra just a little bit. If you've seen the videos, a lot of the instruments they have their own microphones. Yeah,
I noticed. I was wondering why that was. Okay, so that was just to bring it all up to kind of blend, because it is weird a little. That's the hard thing when you amplify just the bass.
I want to show you something. To show you this. I'm not making a commercial. I didn't get any money to do this. So I invested in this guy. This is a Neumann TLM 102.
Oh, that's a great mic.
I also invested in that amplifier. It's a Warwick, but I ended up not even using that. I decided to do this. Okay, I'm going to research and buy all these technical things to help me have the best acoustic sound possible. So I invested in that. I invested in a preamplifier there. So it was really tough to make the bass sound as natural as possible, and also to amplify a little bit the orchestra that we don't have anyone going up to the other, and above the other. It was not easy. So that part was difficult because, up to the dress rehearsal, we still didn't have the actual sound that we were going to have in the concert. So it was hard in that sense. And we didn't have much rehearsals. It was like this. We had, I think, 2 rehearsals.
Wow, really? That's amazing.
It is, man. I don't even know how I played that because we had like 2 rehearsals and then 2 performances. We had 2 performances, But still, it was. I wish we had one more rehearsal at least.
Well, it sounds great. I mean, you did a fantastic job. I love, and it's such a. I love this piece. It's just such a fascinating new piece. What are you going to do with all these interviews and this footage? How is this all gonna? Is it going to be a book? Is it going to be? Have you figured out what you're doing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
There are a couple of options I'm considering, but I don't want to tell yet.
That's okay. We'll keep it a surprise.
So I can tell you one. One is maybe do a similar work that I did with Ritter, something similar to a thesis. The other one is to do just an article, something that's not as heavy, And the other one is another option that I think I wanted to get into that other option, which would be, I think, for bass players, really cool.
Okay. But,
it depends on money, on time, on tons of things, Just so you have an idea, so I could publish, in order for me to publish those videos, I had to have the recorder's permission. So if you go into the credits, it's owned by recording. So it depends a lot of different factors. Depends on the authorization of the orchestra as well. But Jason, I was so happy. It was so hard to get all those authorizations to be on YouTube. And even though, there are many different things that are not perfect, but I wanted to show to the bass community this piece, because even Petraki told me in the interviews, Alex, no one cared about this piece. Not even I played twice. I did the premiere, and no one else played this piece again. You're the only one bringing this piece up again, And I truly believe that this piece, few years from now, it is going to get into the standard solo repertoire for bass. And I'll tell you the reasons. First of all, I think maybe one or two, even three movements are really, really well constructed and beautiful. It shows how much musical talent the guy has and the orchestra has. Technical abilities, and also something that is more and more common is bringing styles together. There's concert music, there's jazz, and there's something very special that people are bringing more and more into music, which is film music. Mm-hmm. For me, film music is the capability of taking the audience out of reality. Like working like a drug, a legal drug. Takes people out of reality. That capability of taking the people out, creating those scenarios and those feelings, and that I think is very powerful. And it's very hard to find in bass music.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to find in bass music, but it definitely has that cinematic sort of quality and the different textures that he's using, and it's a sort of piece that you really want to hear played with orchestra, because you can get the notes with piano, but to have the timbres and the textures is it's really cool. Oh man, I love it. It's such. Well, I can't wait to see what the next step is for you with that. And anything I can do to help get it out there. And this will help, putting it out. But that's one of those things that absolutely should be played more.
Yeah. I'm sure once people get to know the piece, they already want to play. This is a funny thing. So last year I was in Siena, and the other students now, they're sending me emails. Oh, do you have the part I want to play? It's so beautiful, and blah, 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 blah. So I really believe people will really want to play once they get to know the piece, And for the general public as well, Jason, I think the general public will really like the piece. Usually it's hard for people. And other musicians, bass music again, Bottesini, But no, they really, wow, this is really nice music, got my attention. So I'm really excited. I even sent it. I was so excited that I sent an email to the ISP saying, here are my videos. If you could send it to the director, the board director, so they get to know the piece. Because, I don't care if the people know my work, but I really care about people knowing the piece, It's a really great piece.
Alex, so fun to talk with you. I can't wait to hang out in person one of these days. And isn't that a cool piece, this Trovioli? I hope that this becomes one of the major pieces of the bass repertoire. Just such a great piece. And you can check it all out online. Just check out the show notes and you can get links to that. So thanks again for tuning in. Visit contrabassconversations.com/teaching for more about teaching, the materials that I keep hearing time and time again on the podcast, recommendations I hear over and over, what I use in my own teaching, what I'm discovering. I'll be updating this page probably every week with new resources as I discover them. And when I talk to new people and they give me a suggestion for something, I'll add it to that page. So check it out, contrabassconversations.com/teaching. All right, that's going to do it for another episode. So great to have you along. Send me a message, feedback@contrabaseconversations.com. Find me on social media. I'd love to hear from you. And we will be back for our final episode in this week of teaching coverage tomorrow. So see you then for more life in the low end of the spectrum.